Hey everyone, welcome to You'll Probably Agree. Today we're talking about something that a lot of people question these days. Definitely something that I've always had on my mind. Are video games art? And if they are they a high form of art that can be appreciated? And joining me on the panel today is from the Flickering Myth, Rob Koiger. He's pretty much the video game guy I knew. I gave him my copy of the Silent Hill 2 remake to play. And with me today from Special Mark Productions is Mark Crosscheck. How you guys doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right. And just
Yeah, doing good. It's trying to stay warm. Other than that,
yeah. Oh God, it was terrible outside today. Oh my God. Yeah, but enough about that. I think I'm going to start off the panel with this statement is that I think we all know the answer to this question. Why do you think do you think video games are a form of art? Yes, great. Okay, good episode. Goodbye. And then that would be it. But more importantly, why do you think video games can be held as a high form of art comparable to movies and paintings? Who in class would like to go first?
I don't mind going first.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, to me, whether something is artistic or not, this always comes down to is there something of substance in there? Whether you're watching something or playing something or reading
Hmm.
something. And now we are in this age where AI is becoming increasingly rampant. And I think that will make video games even further look like art because it is something being created with human hands. Like obviously it's technology, but humans are doing the creation. I think that'll be something that further helps gaming be perceived as art going forward.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Well said. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I agree that it's art. I mean, I've played some games that uh, were written better than films that I've watched. And while yeah, you're spending a lot more time with these characters overall, just the story, you look at it writing wise, many of these video games, especially the bigger ones, have really well thought out plot lines and stories and such and interesting characters. Not, and that's just the base of it, the writing. If you go into the graphics part, and the design, the look of things are gorgeous. I mean, even I've played some games that while the game itself, the story may not be great, the art in it, whoever they got to do the art for it is fantastic. You
Hmm.
know, the gameplay may be simple, but the art behind it, I mean, there's a lot of side scrollers out there now that have wonderful, depth of field backgrounds for their their platformer, their side scroller that just look gorgeous. The environments are awesome. And yeah, and then, the design as well, having a creative uh, flow for your controls, something that's ease of use. There's some art in that because I've played, again, some games that really the controls suck, or the camera is awful. I mean, how many, mid 2000 aught games or whatnot had, great 3D graphics, but the camera was your enemy. It's like you keep dying because you can't control the camera because the camera is like, so I mean, there's art in crafting the camera in that. My son has a degree in video game programming. He's a programmer in
Oh,
general, but he specifically went uh, to the 4-year college for their program for video game programming. And I saw the game that he was involved in for his senior project, and it's very creative. And there's artistic talent behind this stuff that is just as good as a movie, as a book, and it incorporates all those elements. And I think, yeah, I think it should be considered as art.
yeah, absolutely.
One thing
Well,
I was going to add on,
hmm no, go ahead.
um,
The floor is free.
a couple minutes ago you said are video games a high form of art? And that got me thinking, well, even movies, we consider them art. There's some pretty low forms of art there too, like those Adam
Michael
Sandler
Bay.
movies. Yeah, Adam
Yeah,
Sandler.
yeah. Bill. Well, Bill. You know what? I don't want to lambast Billy Madison because I saw
Well,
that
that's a
movie
funny
growing up, and
movie.
yeah, it's a funny movie,
I was
but
talking about like
yeah.
Jack and Jill and some of the really bad
Oh
ones.
Oof.
yeah,
Yeah.
Oof.
Dunkachino. You
Mm.
know, Al Pacino had to do that part because he had like an accountant who like got him in some Ponzi scheme, and he lost like $800 million, and he had to like do Jack and Jill to like get the money back. Although I don't think they paid him 800
He
mil, but
still
yeah.
No,
might be
but
trying to get the money back because
yeah.
I just saw like a notice or like email for some straight to VOD looking movie that he's going to be in a couple
Um,
months.
he
So I
used
guess
to.
he's
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, I was going to say I guess he's still looking for money then.
Yeah, it's funny that reminds me way back. This is a long time ago, and it seemed like he was trying to make money. He was in this film called Righteous Kill, and
Yep.
it was like the big
Right.
deal was that he teams up with Robert De Niro again, but this time they're in the whole movie, you know. And then he did another movie with the same director that year, and both were complete trash. And it's just like, did Al Pacino like lose a bet, and he ended up doing this film, or I don't know. But we're getting sidetracked. But when we talk about outside of Al Pacino, and I would love to see Al Pacino in a game, by the way, make him the final boss. But I'd say, are video games a form of art? Yes, and here's why. First off, the definition of art is the process of deliberately arranging elements in a way that appeals to the senses or emotions. Well, I can think of a lot of video games that do that. I can think of games like Flower or Journey or Shadows of the Colossus, Metal Gear Solid, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And geez, well, there's one game that I'll probably be referencing a lot tonight, and it's called That Dragon Cancer.
Mm.
And that's a video game about a guy whose son is dying of cancer. You know, he's like this 5, 6 year old kid or something like that. He's dying of cancer, and he basically reenacts like all these moments he's having through his son's treatment, which is also like his final days, and he puts it together in a game that there's no goal, there's no predetermined rules. It's just an experience where you're going around the hospital, you're reading the cards from the parents to other kids. You're inside of the father's subconscious at one point where he just sees his son on a gigantic MRI scanner, and they just keep floating images, and it connects to something else. But it's like you can't, I don't know how anyone can tell me video games aren't a form of art when someone's doing something that personal and turning it into something not like, I'm sure it turned a profit. It's for like $8 on the App Store, but like he's made something that is absolutely inspiring a lot of emotions and feelings through imagery. So wouldn't that be the definition of art?
Absolutely, sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I
Also,
mean,
can I? Oh, you can go
no, go ahead,
first.
Rob. No, go.
I was just going to add a game to the list of ones Mike mentioned. It's an indie PC game called To the Moon,
Mm.
and it's there's a lot of puzzles involved, but the puzzles they're trying to piece together, you're going through like a man's memories, and I believe he's dealing with Alzheimer's and stuff,
Mm.
and you learn
Hmm.
about his life and everything. It's just a really sad game. It's something if Christopher Nolan ever wanted to adapt a video game, this is the one he would do.
Hmm. Because it's in the mind and time's involved,
Yeah,
I
there's a
guess.
lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you look at the more mainstream example if people are looking for something a little more to relate to. There's a reason why The Last of Us is still talked about today, why they did a
Hmm.
series on it, why they're doing the season two and season one. They adapted it so very accurately for a video game adaptation. It was insane because I've played through the first one like 3 or 4 times,
Hmm.
and it was emotional every time you play it.
Hmm.
And then I finally just finished Last of Us Part 2, and holy balls. Pardon my French, but it is that is an emotional ride.
Yeah, it's a hell of a golf simulator.
It it really was an emotional ride, and at the end of it I was like, oh, how are people, I know why people got angry at it, but how? I'm like, this is such a well-crafted story. The
Mm.
characters, I got attached to them. And there's moments in that game where you're not fighting zombies. You're just walking around interacting with people, and but you're attached. You feel emotions. You get moved by certain scenes in here, and there's other games that have done that to me, to where I'm playing them and they're quieter games, but you're just like, you're moved. You're like, holy, or you do a twist and you're like, wait, what? And all of a sudden you feel like, you feel almost betrayed if there's some betrayal in the game or whatnot. You get emotionally attached to these characters, especially if you're playing a 50, 60-hour game, and there's art in that. If it wasn't artistically well crafted, you'd check out. You wouldn't care. You're like, oh, well, I beat that. I can just check that box off. I'm just moving on. Whereas me, I got give it a little while, but I'd play Last of Us Part 2 again in a heartbeat.
Mm. It's funny.
As someone, as someone who also loves The Last of Us Part Two, and we're talking about what gives something artistic value, I would say having the guts to do something that will alienate that fan base is part of what
Hmm.
makes something art, not
Mhm.
just doing the same thing over again or making something that will make fans happy. I think
Yeah.
art is about taking chances and taking risks.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I liked The Last of Us Part Two when I first
Mhm.
played it, and then the second time I played it, I was like, some of the popular criticism is kind of right. I couldn't get very connected to a lot of the characters,
Mhm.
especially when you cut to Abby. Not Abby at first or Abby, but just her friends, and they
Oh,
and they just keep like referencing like Isaac, or was that his name, or
yeah, Isaac.
yeah, yeah, they're like Isaac this, Isaac that. I'm like, who the fuck is Isaac? I haven't even seen him yet, And then they cut to him, and I'm like, oh, it's Jeffrey Rush, and then he's there for like two scenes,
Yeah.
but it's like, yeah, characters like that weren't that interesting, but and everyone kind of seemed to play like the same role, but I won't go into a whole spiel about The Last of Us Part Two. I just felt like it was kind of a generic revenge tale,
Mhm.
but yeah, and I kind of felt bored playing it. Like once you get over the shock of the opening, what was it, like 30 minutes in,
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
golfing happens, yeah.
Yeah.
Once you get past that, and you kind of get past that feeling, you're kind of like, oh, now it's just kind of like, I kind of get tired of like the revenge is bad stories. Like, what are
Mm.
you doing that's saying anything different about this revenge is bad story? Like, honestly, I think what they should have done with the ending of that game, and I'll just spoil it for a second. She should have killed Abby because it would have been so much greater if she killed Abby. She got what she wanted, but she still feels empty, and she heads back to Dina's house,
Hmm.
and her and the baby are gone.
Yeah.
It's like even doing that, it's like that would have been so much better than, oh no, I'm gonna let you live because I all of a sudden feel bad about hurting people, although I just killed like 1,000 people earlier in the game. Like,
Eh,
okay,
but see, and
but
I see it as the other way, is that here she tracked the whole thing down, and at the very end, she realized she just couldn't do it,
mm,
for sympathy for many reasons, because she ended up starting to see a lot of her earlier self in Abby, uh, and
mm,
her coming back to the empty house shows you how much of how how futile revenge was, and she was being told how futile revenge was
mm.
all along, yet she still was driven by it. And then she gets to an empty house and she realized, well, crap, I did a good thing and I still get nothing. But I mean, that's like, in all honesty, that's a life lesson. That's a life thing. I liked that actually quite a bit. That here she finally had the turnaround and thinking, oh, now that I've been through doing revenge, I'm on the road to redemption, and I come back and maybe we can patch things. No, you can't. You've made your bed, you lie in it, or lack of bed. And so that's what I liked about the story. But again, this is another thing about art,
Hmm.
is that people, and it's why I love movies. I've always said, you look at a movie, you've got 100 people or so if you pack the house or whatnot. watching the same thing and people get something different out of it. You'll get one person who loved it, one person who hated it, one person
Hmm.
in between, a character that other people didn't right care for that someone related to, all looking at the same thing but getting something different. And for me, that's art. Everybody going to a museum and looking at a famous painting and someone goes, well, that's boring. And the other person goes, and the other person goes, oh my God, this is mind blowing. That is what I think is some true pieces of art, or that they take risks to where you look at it, go, it's not going to be for everyone.
Yeah.
It's gonna be odd. I just watched a short film last night that's like that, from a director who makes his own shit. He doesn't care who does what with it, or who likes it or who doesn't. He's telling his story. And
Hmm.
that's another form of art. You've got indie games out there that are just doing their own thing.
Mm.
And regardless of whether or not it's going to be big or not, they want to make something and they're making it. And you've got a lot more indie stuff out there now. And some games that embrace like developers and mods last longer. I mean, look
Yeah.
at Last of Us 2.
Hmm.
I mean, not Last of Us 2, Left 4 Dead 2.
Left for Dead. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Left 4 Dead 2 still being played. If you go
Wow.
there, you can get multiplayer games. You can find people to join the game with you and play. And that game's been out 15 something years.
Really?
It, it
What
or
console did it
not
come out for?
well,
Xbox 360, I think,
it
and
was it
PC.
was on
Really?
PC and
Mhm.
Xbox at first, and then
Oh
yeah.
wow, I didn't even
Uh
know about this. Left for Dead. I've heard the name. I'm getting it
it's
confused with the one where you have like famous serial killers chase after
Oh
you.
no, this, yeah,
That's
Left
Dead
4
After
Dead
Daylight,
2.
I think.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Left 4 Dead 2 is 16 years old.
Wow.
Not 16. It is 14 years old, I think, because Left 4 Dead 2 came out no, 2009. So yeah, so 15 years Left 4 Dead 2 has been around and it's still being played today. They embraced the mod community. They let people modify the game, and some of those mods actually were officially released as DLCs. But you look at that game, when I played that game, it was totally putting you into an immersive world, zombie world. And I'm a big zombie guy. But when I first played that game, I was having dreams about zombies for the first month I played the game, because it's a creepy, scary game, even though
Wow.
you're playing with friends. And it sparked dreams. And I'm like, how could you not consider something like that art?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny when we talk about games as art. I always remember like the first time I saw a video game, and I'm like, this is something else. This is different. And that's when I rented a copy of Metal Gear Solid VR missions, and
Oh,
I
wow.
didn't
Yeah.
know that VR missions wasn't the base
Right.
game. So I go into the trailers. And then the trailer for Metal Gear Solid's there. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess this is a trailer to the game I'm playing. And then all of a sudden, they just start with the best is yet to come.
Right.
And I'm just like, oh, wow, there's beautiful music to this. And then there's like this whole story going on while you hear this. And it has like in 19, what was it, like 98 when it came out?
I think so, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, it's like 98. We never saw anything like that before in a video
No.
game. We never saw something that was like Hollywood quality, which I mean, now we look at it today, we're like, oh, the bloody graphics. But it's like back then it was incredible. And I remember not just being blown away by the graphics, but the story, the way it
Hmm.
twists and turns. And then as I got older, I appreciated it more because I got more interested in the whole nuclear deterrence thing, especially when Trump was fucking around with Kim Jong-un. I was like, well, now we really need to know about this. How do I get out of here? Help me. But that was a game you appreciate. You see it once, and the plot is so layered. You can see it again
Hmm.
and again, or play it. I should say, although with Metal Gear, you mostly do kind of just see it, but you could just see it or play it again and again, and still get something out of it each time. And well, the sequel is a whole other story. That one I loved, but we'll get into that in a second. But what was like your first moment where you noticed like video games are more than just games?
Mm.
mine was similar to yours. It was just the first Metal Gear Solid because
Yeah.
I would grow up playing video games, but it was stuff like Mortal Kombat or Sonic, stuff that was fun but didn't really stimulate my mind or necessarily show me how video games can stimulate your mind. And Metal Gear Solid 1 was definitely one of the first ones to do that, along with stuff like Silent Hill 2, which is very
Mm.
psychological and disturbing.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, that one was kind of disturbing. Do you remember the first time you're like, "Oh, this is art, Mark," or was
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm back from, and I still have one, the Intellivision days and the Atari
Oh yeah.
2600s, So I was there from the beginning, man.
Yeah.
Um, so I remember I remember going from that to playing versus Super Mario. It wasn't Super Mario Brothers, it was versus Super Mario Brothers, a stand up in the Northwoods when my dad took us on a fishing trip. We were in a bar and I'm like, what the hell is that? Because up until then, I had been used to Atari games and in television graphics and that, the 16 color, 8 color type stuff. So I see this, I'm like, what is this? And I'm
Mm.
playing and I'm like, grabbing mushrooms and I put so many quarters into that versus Super Mario, and then a couple years later the home system came out. I'm like, holy wow. And so I played it and a lot of it was dealing with side scrollers and that. I think for me, um the first one where I felt like it was actually art was I would say Final Fantasy 7.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially that
Final
opening scene where they
fi-
go from Aerith to Midgar in one shot.
Final Fantasy VII for me, really, I would say it's probably the first one that I realized what people could do with video games. And there's a one, and I always love the story of how that almost was a Nintendo game, but
Hmm.
Nintendo didn't want to give away the leave cartridges, so
Yeah.
it's like, and they're like, ah, damn,
And they
but
also stabbed Sony in the back, so
and
Sony
they
like
stibbed it,
yeah.
yeah.
So Sony made
So
him regret it forever, yeah.
it was Final Fantasy VII, and then there was also Resident Evil.
Mm.
For me, I didn't really play a huge Silent Hill stuff, and now I may go back to it because my one friend is just a huge fan, like a
Mm.
massive fan. But I played Resident Evil, and being a horror fan, I was like, holy crap, I'm literally a character in a B horror movie. You know, and so I played that and I thought it was fun and campy and it was intense. And then Final Fantasy VII, the rich story behind you're like, man, there are so many characters and each one has their own story and you can do this, and it was amazing. I'm like, this is crazy that they're able to do this. And then that's when I figured it was like, yeah, this is like another form of art. This is another way of storytelling that is immersive, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And
I
not to,
might. Oh, go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but
Yeah,
they've remade that game and the story, it still stands the test of time.
it
And with
does.
climate change going on, it's still relevant today. And I think
Yeah,
that's another example of art, something that lasts through time.
Yeah. Yeah, because that game was, I think it was about environmentalism,
yeah.
Yep.
and global
Hmm.
warming because they wanted to blow up the factory that I don't remember the name of the corporation or something, the Midgar Corporation, something like that.
The
Hmm.
Shinra Corporation.
Shinra,
Yeah,
yeah, Shinra.
Shinra.
They wanted to take the big bad guys down, and in a way, people were I guess they were kind of okay with what Avalanche was doing. Not
Hmm.
everyone, but like in the original Final Fantasy VII, it seems that way. In the remake, it's more like you see like the repercussions of your destruction a little bit when you're running around the streets. I so wish I could play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but I can't get past the stupid fucking card game. And like it's
Yeah,
I was never good at cards. Cards is not my thing. I think it's probably because I'm a little autistic. No, like literally I'm diagnosed. But like probably because of that, like I could never follow the rules that much.
sure.
I'd just be like, "Huh?" So like I know the rules in this game and I still just get my ass kicked, and I know if I don't play the card game, I can't progress further in the
Mhm.
game. Like at a certain point, they just like take you to a hold. And also, I can't upgrade properly.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm
See,
gonna. I'm sorry.
See, and that's a console example, but even just before that, if you look at PC gaming when it was huge,
Yeah.
uh, the Ultima series,
Mm.
the Ultima RPG series, when it got into, even though the graphics were simple, especially when you got into three, four, from three on up, you had an engrossing story. You had a multi-threaded story and meeting characters and that was developing around that time. And yeah, it's one of those things where you got into it and you realize this is more than just getting a high score or just leveling up your guy. There's
Mhm.
actually something very interesting going on here, and I want to know more with these characters. I want to explore the entire map. I don't want to just go from town to town and main mission to main mission. I
Mhm.
want to do these side missions. I want to explore every inch of this land, which is a good thing because if you get to, I think it was Ultima 7 was the big one. That was the big one for Ultima. If you get to Ultima, I believe it was 7, if you explored the map enough, you'd find like little pockets of either villains or just characters that would have full lines of dialogue or, just a unique area that you looked really cool that someone put some time into the design of. And that I think adds to the actual art of it being considered art is because they made it an actual environment, not just getting from point A to point B to point C, which some games do, but you know, uh,
Mhm.
those are examples, definitely ones that I think are very artistic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think because video games, they give you, unlike other forms of art where you just kind of view it or you listen to it, is giving you choice and they're
Hmm.
making you directly responsible for what's going to happen in a game. And w with choice, you have games that most games, they don't really give you like the choice of what ending you want.
Hmm.
It's mostly linear and this is what the ending's going to be and that's it. Especially if you played Mass Effect 3 and it
Yeah.
took a giant dump on all the choices that you made. But because you have that element of choice, you become the storyteller yourself.
Hmm.
And Roger Ebert said that he doesn't like how choice it can't be art because you have choice implemented into it. And I'm just like, how does that make any sense? Because I would think having choice would make it an even higher form of art than, or than what I'm giving it credit for. Because with choice, you're making the user you're directly engaging them with the material. You're not just having them see something. With choice, it's a lot like a movie with an open interpretation ending. You kind
Hmm.
of like what happens to Forrest Gump when he looks through the crossroads. Does he go back home or does he go to the girl who got the package from the island he was trapped in? That's something where you're giving the audience a choice. Well, imagine what the ending's going to be. Here you kind of get to see what the ending's going to be and you get to see the good ones and the bad ones. You can play Silent Hill 2, and you have I think there's like 8 endings
Yeah.
in there.
There's
Yeah,
like yeah, it's crazy how many endings you have.
yeah, and a lot of them are very cathartic, very
Hmm.
emotional. But then you get silly ones like where you get the dog ending. Where you find out a dog is actually controlling you, or you get the alien ending, where they actually made a cool little twist with the alien ending in the new one. I won't give away, but yeah. But you get that. It's like it's your option. Choose what you want to have see happen. I got a little frustrated when I beat the game, the Silent Hill 2, the remake, for the second time. Yes, I played it twice because I wanted to get another ending, and I thought I did all the rules, and I'm like, okay, hopefully I'll get the ending, and then I got the same one I did beforehand. I'm like, well, that was a big waste of my time, but. That does come into question. What do you think about choice when it comes to video games and the designer and the user and how choice is either a high form of artistic merit or if it does limit something from actually being artistic because you're making the user the artist or the player?
I'll answer this first because I'll probably have a minority opinion, but I've never really liked choice in games. I've
Mm,
always just rather preferred when it was a writer or a director or whatever just telling the story they wanted to tell, period.
Hmm.
mm-hmm,
Although I do like how Silent Hill 2 does it, where the endings you get are dependent on how you play the game, not
mm-hmm,
like direct choices that you make. So
mm-hmm.
that to me has always felt a little more artistic. But I've always just preferred whenever there's just something like The Last of Us that is this is the story they wanted to tell, period.
Hmm.
And they can leave anything up to interpretation to the player.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, you know
Oh, but I
what's
also I wouldn't say it's limiting or restricting something from being art just because there are choices. It's different for sure, but
mhm.
I disagree that it limits something and would make it not art.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know how it limits it. I have to go back to the article to see the logic behind it. But I mean, it basically, Roger Ebert was saying that he doesn't like how video games follow a rudimentary sort of like floor plan for how they actually uh, have these games, how they actually structure these games. He thinks games basically have a structure where you have to reach a goal and then you get the goal and then you beat the game. And that's what the whole game is. And then the funniest thing is someone showed him Flower and then
I
he
was gonna bring
said,
that up. Someone mentioned Flower earlier.
yeah,
That's a game that doesn't have a goal.
yeah. And then Roger Ebert said, well, I don't get this at all. This has no goal. And I'm like, that's the thing you were complaining about. And you're like, what are you talking? But
Yeah, well, it reminds me of, you know, not only is it art in, artistic, but being the IT guy that I am, technical wise, it's pretty impressive what how creative people get with the technology. I mean, Nintendo has always been the forefront, regardless of what people think in the console wars. The
hmm
f- the console that will come out with the most original idea first, good or bad, is going to be Nintendo.
hmm
They get creative with their interactive stuff, and stuff fails, like
the
the
Virtual
Virtual
Boy.
Boy.
Yeah.
But then you get things that hit, like um, with the Wii U, how it suddenly,
Yeah.
interactive and got people moving, and it was made for casual gamers, and it was interactive, and it made it social, and people shared experiences, and someone could play next to you and be controlling something different than you on the little monitor when you got to the Wii U. I mean, just stuff like that, or the little interactive robot that comes along, with Robbie the robot back in the original Nintendo. A light gun for your home, for crying out loud. You
Power
know,
Glove. Yeah.
Power Glove. Oh my God. Man, I tell you. Yeah, the Wizard. I've got the Wizard on DVD.
I love
That
the
is
Power
the
Glove. It's so bad.
before the internet, the Wizard was the longest, most expensive video game commercial to introduce. I think it was Super
Super
Mario
Mario
3.
Brothers 3, yeah,
Yeah.
where they play in
That
front of a
was
whole crowd at Universal Studios. And I think Tobey Maguire like makes a little appearance as a kid in it. See,
it's
I gotta watch that movie again.
it was, but the whole purpose was to
California.
the whole purpose was to promote the Power Glove and Super
Yeah.
Mario 3. That's the entire thing of it. But you know, uh, and that's where art collides. But for me, you see the innovation, you see the interesting things, and yeah, you have choice in some. In others, you don't have choice. It's pretty linear, your platformers and that. It all depends on what you like to play, but that doesn't make it any less art. I mean, if you look at any film plot, for crying out
hmm
loud, you go from point A to point B to point C
hmm
with your characters, with not all of them, but some of the movies out there. That's the whole point. You know, a quest like your adventure movie. Okay, we need to get this key to unlock this lock that has this princess trapped. Okay, well, we got to go to this tower and talk to this guy. Well, that guy won't give that to us until we go find this book. Well, we got to go find this book in a movie, so it's no real different than a video game in many ways. It's to so to say that the choice, you know, doesn't make it art, or that you have to have, that you end up just going to the end to get to a goal. I'm like, any adventure movies like that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I guess, and that's the thing. That's any action movie, any adventure movie, and the funniest thing is when video games do it better than the movies. Such as the Uncharted series.
Yeah.
That's like an updated Indiana Jones that no one else really thought of. And then they made an Uncharted movie, and the movie wasn't as good as the game. I
Mhm.
mean, first off, like Tom Holland is a fine actor, but he looks way too young to be Nathan Drake. I don't care if he's a young Nathan Drake. He looks too young to be Nathan Drake. And also, Mark Wahlberg is Sully. What are they thinking with that? But you can't really cast Mark Wahlberg in a lot of roles because his acting isn't that great.
Yeah, I think the
So,
other issue there with a lot of these video game adaptations is that they don't know why people love these games, so they're
Right.
just trying to cram like three stories from them into one entry.
Mhm. Or
yeah,
Like the
every reference, every popular reference from the video
yes,
game into one film, even though that reference makes no sense that you need it.
like Pyramid Head in the first Silent Hill movie.
yeah. But that scene was cool when he like ripped that girl's
Yeah,
skin off and just threw it in at the camera. I was just like, holy shit. But yeah, I mean, Pyramid Head is supposed to be a manifestation of James's
Right.
psychoses, not everyone else's. It's his Silent Hill.
and the Uncharted movie, I think it begins with the prologue to Uncharted 3. It has characters from Uncharted 2, a
Hmm.
subplot from Uncharted 3, but it's trying to establish everything that Uncharted 1 does about the characters until you just end up with a mess.
And,
Yeah.
and that's
And
why I've always said, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, nothing. I was just gonna mention how Nathan Fallon's is that his name? The guy who
Nathan
voices
Fillion.
Yeah.
Fallon. Yeah, like his cameo was just such a like. You see, we appreciate the fans. Like, no, you don't know what you're doing.
I'm happy
That's
he got paid though.
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
he got his money. So there
he
you
got to
go.
sit in a beach
I
and
mean
then he got paid. Yeah,
for me, one of the best movie adaptations of a video game, I'm gonna say it and people can scoff, the first Mortal Kombat movie.
Oh, I
that's
love
pretty
that
good.
movie.
Yeah, that
The
movie's
first,
it's fun.
if you look at the concept of the video game and you're like, how are you going to make a movie based off of a fighting game? Well, they took the story that was in the fighting game and just basically replicated it
Yeah,
in the movie for the most part. They added a couple of elements from Mortal Kombat 2 at the end, but people don't mind because you got to see a really cool Liu Kang versus Reptile battle, probably one of
And
the better fun fights in it. But you look at that and there they understood the assignment, so to speak. They looked at it, they go, we're going to just take that and make a live action version of that. We're not going to try to cram other things into it. We're not going to try to force things. Here's the concept. Here we go. Here's the film. And it ended up it's still a fun movie. I love watching it. I'll throw it in every so often,
and it's filled with wall-to-wall fights.
and
yeah,
it's filled with fights too. So it's one of those things where uh yeah, you can do it right. You can adapt it right, but when they don't, you're really scratching your head. You're like, how, when you have such good source material, how do you screw this up?
yeah.
Because the video game is art. It's got a well-crafted story and scenes in that. How do you mess that up? And that's why when I saw
The
Last of
original
Us,
Max Payne.
yeah, the original
Oh,
Max Payne.
what they're coming out with a new one?
No, I mean the
No,
movie, the
yeah,
Yeah,
adaptation of the
yeah. I
original.
meant for a second. I thought you meant they're coming out
Oh
with
no,
like
I
a
just
new Max Payne
and
movie. Like, oh
oh they'll
no.
probably try
no.
again at some point.
Yeah,
I mean,
let me do it.
worst example is Super Mario Brothers. I mean,
Right,
oh
yeah.
my, oof,
I will say
oof.
I am in the minority of this film. I liked that movie when I was a kid, and when I saw it as an adult, I still liked it. And I think it was because I didn't think of it as a Super Mario Brothers movie. It
Right.
was something that had their name slapped on the title. If you don't think about it as a Mario Brothers movie,
Yeah.
it's kind of like a fun, weird film where people go into like this prehistoric metropolis and try to get their way out of it and save a king there. And it's like, oh,
I
that's really interesting.
Yeah, I will give that movie credit for taking some like crazy risks and at
Yeah.
least trying to be off the wall weird.
Yeah. And
I mean,
It
apparently,
doesn't work, but I admire it.
and it was directed by this husband and wife who either they didn't get along or they with each other or the entire crew, but there's like
Hmm.
some drama behind that. But that's one of those movies where it's like the making of the movie is probably way more interesting. Actually, if you
Yeah.
work on movie sets, the making of most movies is you think film sets are fun, they're not. You're
No.
mostly just sitting around for, you know, 14 to 18 hours and then being told to show up, 4 hours later for the next
Yeah.
day. So everyone on a film set is tired and pissed off and
Hmm.
ready, so it's like that. I want to see a movie about the making of the Wizard of Oz.
I don't
Like,
mean to cut
because,
you off, but
yeah,
thinking about it, I would take the old Mario over the new animated one any day. Because the
yeah,
new
Wow.
animated one is just that's just pandering.
it's just
Like there's yeah,
references.
there's
Yeah.
yeah, it's just nostalgia pandering and there's not much there to remember or latch onto.
Yeah, the only thing I remember was the Peaches song from Jack Black.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like
Uh,
everything else is just blurred. Like, oh, okay,
see,
they're
and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than that, though. I fully recognized what it was doing, but it was definitely made for a younger audience, though. So I kind of appreciated that for those whose parents introduced them to Mario Brothers, or those. I mean, Mario Brothers is still around. I mean,
yeah.
there's another thing for if you
Hmm.
want to consider it art. It, Mario, and I always joke about this. You've got Sony and you got Xbox who try to do all these different games and try to be big, and some of them are hit, but the majority of them are miss. But Nintendo continuously goes to back to the well and comes up with new and interesting ways to present these same characters that they know us Gen Xers grew up with. I play a new Mario game. We got two new ones upstairs. I play them, and they feel like Mario games, but they're different.
Hmm.
They're different, but it's being interpreted in a new way and created and modified and drawn, and you're just like, this, how could you not consider it art with it being around this long and people still, I mean, look at Zelda. Look
Yeah.
at,
And they finally made a Zelda game about Zelda where you play as Zelda too
yeah,
recently.
and they made, but Breath of the Wild, look how gorgeous Breath of the Wild is.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's more than just a basic game. It is art. There's artistic things going on in there, designs in the castles and the making things feel. You have to have the things look somewhat. If you're putting real life items in there, you've got to have them feel somewhat like the real world thing, and that takes art to replicate that or give you that feeling. You want it to feel like wind, you know.
Yeah.
It's like.
Yeah, well, it's funny because when you're making a video game, it's a lot like making a movie. You
Mhm,
have your set designer, you have your costume designer, you have your director, you have your producer, and then your lighting engineers or whatever, whoever designs the lighting in games. With I don't make games, so I don't know, but like
yep.
but like
Hmm.
whoever's doing the lighting, that's an artist. Whoever's doing the animation, that's an artist. It's just like making an animated film in a way,
Hmm.
except that you get to play in the animated film. It's an animated film that looks like real life, and I certainly wouldn't call The Last of Us Part 2 like an animated film. That tries very hard to be grounded. But you
Hmm.
have all these artists working together to produce something that usually, like if it's from Neil Druckmann, for instance, it's going to be something of substance that he wants to say. And although I
Hmm.
wasn't very thrilled with The Last of Us Part 2 in the long run, I like the fact that it had some balls and it really took some big swings and big choices. And it's like I didn't think it succeeded, and I know I thought Joker succeeded at that, and everyone hated it. But I'm in my own island with that. I'm in an island with some other friends. Ian agrees with me, and David and Michael Phillips. So they all agree with me on that. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't see how you can't call it art when you have so many people in different spectrums of the art putting something together. And yeah, it could just be a bunch of people getting together making Call of Duty, or it could be a bunch of one guy like in his basement making like an indie game, or it could be uh uh it could just be a crew of people working on the next God of War, which is like, yeah, it's a commercial property, but it's handled with a very delicate story that's filled with gods and explosions, but it's still delicate.
But look at the detail. I mean, even simple app games.
Hmm.
Uh, I get it. I'm addicted to. I fully admit it. I addicted to a game called Merge Dragons. It's one of those merge games. But if you zoom up really close, it's very intricately and detailed animation pictures and such. Or like God of War. You mentioned God of
Hmm.
War. If you look at it, it's more than just the guy scrolling sideways. There's patterns on the jars that you smash, and there's patterns on the buildings, and
Hmm.
there's texture, and there's depth, and there's flowers and stuff that have nothing to do with the game, but just to be in the environment to try to create an environment. And that's art. Those are artists creating that, because if you don't do it correctly, it'll get noticed.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like if you screw up the design on a character or something, everyone hates it. I remember when the Devil May Cry remake came out, and
Mm-hmm.
everyone's like, "Oh my God, this is terrible." Blah. I didn't know they were saying that. I never really read the press about it because I think at that point, I just like didn't play Devil May Cry much because I'm
Right.
just like, yeah, I
I
just
gave the game a chance and it was indeed terrible. I tried
yeah,
to give it a chance as much as I could.
the remake or the
Yeah, the
original.
remake.
Oh
No,
yeah,
the
see,
remake. It's
I
so
played the
edgy and
remake.
forced.
It
It's
was weird.
terrible.
It was weird. I played it straight through and I enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy the plot, but I enjoyed the graphics and I enjoyed the action, And Devil May Cry isn't something where I'd say, well, I mean, uh, you have artists involved in it, but that one's as much as art as as like an
Well,
action
The
film or something
art
like
not
that.
all
design is
art is
there.
good. Not all art
Yeah.
is good. So.
Yeah, not all art is great art, You still get your Jack and Jills out there, but you can also get some wonderful works of art like The Last of Us, like Flower or Journey or
Oh,
what?
Journey, yeah.
Oh yeah, but I mean,
Man,
yeah, Journey. That one just makes you. I want a virtual reality experience with that. I just want to be in a not a virtual reality, but I want to be in front of like a small theater with a controller with the speakers on and just go for the journey. And the nice
yeah,
thing is that that game kind of does something opposite that a lot of other games do, which is a lot of games the goal is to beat the other player
yeah,
whenever you run into other people. And in this game, it's to help other players so then they can help you. So they'll help give you like that little circle
yeah,
thingy
yeah.
when you float, and it's like it's great actually, excuse me. It's great at actually teaching you about community, and
Mhm.
working together and then you can kind of learn together through that.
Well, look at, your basic resource gathering game.
Hmm.
Some of those games involve real elements, real components, real minerals, real things that build other real things. Age of Empires is one of those things where I've got a buddy who still plays Age of Empires 2, because not only does he really enjoy the game design, folks, but the story and the historical references, and and there's pictures, like portraits drawn of famous people that took art. It wasn't just some kind of photoshopped thing. People drew this. They painted this. They colored it. They lined it.
Hmm.
It's like it's the same question of, are comic books art? I remember there'd be a
Yeah.
debate. There was a debate for a while. Are comic books art?
Yeah. I think
And
once Mouse came out, people saw that it could be art.
mhm. And then
Yeah.
suddenly people kind of restructured their context for, art and for what it was. And then you had graphic novels, come out in the West when I was in the 90s, how they became big. And somebody's like, oh, wow, these are very artistic. These are gorgeous. These are it's like, yeah.
Hmm.
And video games, they're the same thing.
To your point, that just reminds me of like when movies first became a thing. They probably went through the same conversation. Like
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's
it
it's
was.
like people
Yeah.
stubborn to recognize something new as innovative and artistic.
Yeah, I
Movies have gone through it.
was.
And games are still relatively new. They're only, what, 30 years old?
About
So
30, I would
there's,
say
yeah,
30.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
yeah,
before.
like
Yeah.
it's
7.
still a young industry for sure.
I
Yeah.
would
And
say till, yeah.
we're still
Sorry.
only beginning to learn like what we can do with them or with that
Mhm.
technology.
Well, and the
Yeah.
technology is helping too. I mean, I already read somewhere that there is a new game. I think Google designed it of all places, but that basically is like a volumetric on the fly game that basically it's dynamic in that you play it and it's being created as you're playing the game.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
I forgot the article on it. It's an early design, but it's yeah, like you play a character, but the game itself kind of begins to design itself around you and how you play and whatnot. At least that's the concept of it, but it's very early. But still, I mean, you look at that, you're like, oh man.
Yeah.
Now if you're creating something that's going to be a customized experience to how someone plays, how is that not artistic? That's amazing.
Yeah. And there are games that tackle social commentary, like Metal
Mhm.
Gear Solid 2, when, you're playing a game and at first you're like, okay, this is crazy. There's all the Kojima stuff, like the everything goes to shit in the tanker. And then you play as Raiden, and oh my God, the fan base when Raiden first came out, everyone hated him. They're like, why are you playing as this dorky guy with blonde hair?
Same situation as The Last of Us 2, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They took a
yeah.
risk, said, no, you're playing as this character,
Mm-hmm.
and it paid
Yeah.
off.
Yeah, well, but but the thing is, yeah, they took a risk, like you're saying, Rob, and it's not because they wanted to make everyone happy. They wanted something to be remembered,
Mhm.
Right,
And
I
when
wouldn't say it paid off in the moment. People were
Yeah.
mad in the moment, but now I think people look
Mhm.
back and remember Metal Gear Solid 2 fondly, just
Oh yeah, yeah,
because of how much in that story has come true in the present day world we live in.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And it was sort of, I was interviewing David Hayter, and I was kind of saying like this game predicted a lot. How did Kojima think of all this? And he's just like, well, he's just someone who's really well informed,
Mhm.
and like because of that, you're able to see sort of ahead of time what's going to happen, which is true. I could imagine Kojima reading a lot more than I do. That's for sure.
He's always on social media talking about like what he's watching, what he's reading,
Mhm.
and
Mm,
he keeps up to date with all kinds of different artistic mediums.
yeah,
Yeah, he just
yeah.
seems like an intelligent guy all around.
Yeah, he is. I mean, the way he handled the whole Konami fallout was very
Yeah.
well done. Because he could have said, "Oh, well, they did this. They cut the power. They wouldn't let us eat. I don't know, just making up horrible things Konami might do. They locked me in a cage, whatever they did. But he didn't say anything. He's just like, no, no, just let it stay there. I want to find out what Silent Hills was gonna be."
Oh yeah.
Because
The-
I still can't play the PT trailer. It scares me too much. And that's amazing artistry. Like the way the door opens and then you just see something like at the top of the chandelier, but it's like real blurry and it moves real fast and you're like, what the fuck? And then you look up later that there's some lady looking down on you and she looks all deformed. But the way they shadow it, the way they light it, the way that they pace it, the sound design. Oh my God. Like you could play that game in a museum and just make sure that, people don't like fall out of their chair screaming. Because when Lisa shows up and just like kills you, whoo, I don't like it. But that's a game where I'm like it's because Silent Hill is really like that was like one of the few like one of the first real artsy ones.
yeah.
Not the first one as much, although I love the first one. But like that second one was art because you're like, okay, is this
Mhm.
movie going on in somebody's head or is this real? And I mean, we know Silent Hill is actually real and it's sort of a manifestation of someone's conscious that comes to have them either pay penance or
Yeah.
to face their own demons in a way. And I always liked Silent Hill 2 because it was a game that it felt like an art film. It's still made for money,
Yeah.
but there's still a lot of intention there. Nobody's making this game where they know it's for money. It's like, oh, I know what'll make money. A guy searching for his dead wife that sent him a letter, but you put that into a story and people remember it for a long time. Konami really killed it like during the PS2
Mhm.
days.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Konami really did a lot, but we're talking about art and video games as art. I'll go back to Myst.
Hmm.
I remember when Myst came out, there was a lot of people talking about Myst because even though it was a point and click game, I mean it
Hmm.
wasn't as interactive. You're point and clicking on these gorgeous pictures that were part of the environment I mean beautiful interactive, you clicked on certain things and that and you get items and whatnot. I mean, Myst was the point and click type thing, but just the art in what you were seeing on your screen, that was the level of detail and colors and craftsmanship in the art of those still backgrounds was amazing. And that blew people away. They're like, holy, you can make a game look this good? Even though it was just your basic still point and click, someone had to make that in a digital environment with an artistic thumb. You couldn't have
Hmm.
some tech head just come in and whip this up. It had to have some artistic talent to
Yeah.
create those stills and those environments.
Yeah, because it takes a team of people to make games like that, even or even smaller ones if it's one person. How is that not different from someone who wants to be a filmmaker one day?
Yeah.
So they grab their phone and make a movie on their iPhone. It's funny. There's this old soundbite from Francis Ford Coppola and Hearts of Darkness, and that was a
Yeah.
documentary about the making of Apocalypse Now.
Hmm.
And there's this great soundbite from him where he says, "I feel that one day a little girl from Ohio will grab her grandfather's video camera and make a beautiful movie, and then the artistry, the effort to make a
Yeah.
film will be destroyed." And he kind of predicted YouTube. He wasn't like
Yeah.
you know I mean, he was a little more grim than I would say. I think everyone can make a movie now, and it is oversaturated. Everyone wants you to see their movie that's on Vimeo, including me. So soon, including me soon. I'll be making some movie soon. But
Well,
uh,
you
y- I'm
you're
sorry.
gonna
Go ahead.
you're just gonna have that with everything. Video games are the same way. Look at the sheer volume of video games out there that,
Right.
Hmm.
you
Anyone will
know,
publish like an indie game at this point. Steam, especially.
yeah. I
Hmm.
mean,
That,
Real Engine, yeah, Real, 5, Unreal 5
Yeah.
engine being made available for people to use to create games, and then Steam allowing people to post their games for sale. That's it. That sparked people's creativity. Good or bad,
Hmm.
people are creating. You're creating something, and that for me is art. When you take absolutely nothing and you create something that you can see or touch or feel or all three things, how that's art. That's art. That's
created without AI, most importantly.
right, right,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. See, when it's made by a person, you can tell because there's more intention
Yep.
and nuance to it. When
Yes.
it's done by a computer, it looks like it's like if someone painted the Mona Lisa today. It's like it looks good, but it's still missing that little touch that Da Vinci put on there.
It's just I don't know if it's something subconscious or what, but something that's created by an actual person versus something that was just manufactured, you get a different feeling off of it. You can just tell. You look at it and whether or not it is true, like some people say, you put a piece of yourself when you create art, there's a part of yourself in it, and that's what you're feeling. But yeah, you look at, I mean,
Kind
they're
of like
getting.
how you watch a movie, you can tell like if is this personal to a filmmaker or not. And it's like there when you're watching it.
Is this person making this film because they wanted to tell this story, or are they making it for a paycheck?
Right.
You watch enough movies, I'm sure you could all attest to, when being in film critics, you could tell a film a lot of times if someone's there because they're into it and they want to tell this, regardless of what they might tell the public, or if they're just doing it for a paycheck. You can kind of feel that with a lot of movies. Not all of them. I say some of them cover it well, but there's a lot of them where performers or actors where you're just like, yeah, they just showed up for a paycheck. You
Oh
know?
yeah. Like Harrison Ford when he showed up for the Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
Like he didn't even like shave his beard. There's just like stubble around there. And he's just like, yeah, I'll do the fucking scene. Whatever. And he just shows up and says his lines. Oh, I love you, Penn. All right. Give me the money. But yeah, it's funny. We have so many remakes now of games Because what sparks me to do this conversation in the first place is that they have a remake of Silent Hill 2 that came out.
Right.
And it's like when you make a remake, does it have its own artistic value to it, or is it just making the graphics nicer from a game that came out a long time ago?
Well, there's a difference between like an enhancement, which also exists for Silent Hill 2, which is
Hmm.
just redone graphics, and like a full-blown remake, which
Right.
Resident Evil 4 has also had.
Yeah.
Silent Hill 2, this remake, like the Resident Evil 4 one, has like all new expanded areas. The town is bigger.
Hmm.
There's a lot more added to it, at least regarding gameplay. The
Yeah.
story is left mostly untouched, which is probably a good thing. But yeah, I
Hmm.
think there are still art because I suppose they're taking a chance in tweaking the gameplay, expanding certain areas of the game. That's
Yeah.
all stuff that could backfire or ruin the pacing of the game or make something feel out of place. So I think there is still some artistic merit there, especially in a remake.
Yeah, and I feel like this remake is much more of a remake than the Metal Gear Solid 3 remake is, because
Mm.
Metal Gear Solid 3 remake just looks like it's kind of like what Gus Van Sant did with Psycho. He's just doing a shot for shot, same thing. And you could even tell, like, when the preview came out, that has the lip sync with the modern day models made in
Hmm.
Unreal 5 engine, and it looks off when they're talking. Now, maybe that's because they had like Japanese footage and they put in the English voice acting in there
It could
and
be.
it
Yeah.
didn't quite sync it up yet. I don't know. Or it's something that can't fix. But I remember I was watching this and I'm like, yeah, this is just the same exact game, but with prettier graphics
Hmm.
and two very small elements from the Phantom Pain put in there. I mean, I'd like to see a full demo for my mind to be changed. But like I read an article somewhere that they said that um, because of like you could rotate the camera and because of the updated controls it has like like the crouch walking and stuff like that Phantom Pain had, that they had to like update the AI or add more enemies because the game was too easy the other way.
Sure.
And I'm just thinking, if they were to do a Metal Gear Solid 3 remake, what they should do is like maybe keep the same voice actors, keep the same all that stuff. Like I agree, that's okay. Update the graphics, but then expand the map because the map is the
Hmm.
exact same map in the games down to where they have a fake loading screen when you run between areas. And it's like, why don't you just make the forest bigger? If you have these new abilities like crouch walking and being able to switch your camouflage
Hmm.
while you're playing a game instead of having to pause it and go through the menu and switch camouflage, why not make it, why not? You're in a freaking forest. Go wild with it. Have some more animals. Try to get away from a bear at one point. Add that in the game. Like, there's so many places they could go, but it just seems like kind of this lazy reskin where they're like, okay, we're just gonna have the same exact shots, the same exact dialogue, the same exact voice actors, and the same exact maps. And I'm like,
Hmm.
that's not, is that good art or bad? I think visually it's good art, but in terms of making an interactive experience, it's just okay art. Not bad, just eh. That's how I feel. And it's funny because everyone thought Silent Hill 2 was going to be the game that would shit the bed. And it was
Hmm.
actually, and it actually might be Metal Gear. But I'm hoping it's good. I'm hoping I'm wrong, but.
You could
Not from what I'm seeing.
speak similarly about movies too, that so many of these remakes just exist to like
Yeah.
Hmm.
make money and there's not much artistic value. Look at that Lion King remake, shot for shot, like you just said. No
Hmm.
soul to it, live action,
Yeah,
just bad.
I'm excited to see Mufasa on Monday.
I could tell. I could tell. You mean the not retelling of The Lion King? Although the last story trailer gave me a little more hope that it wasn't just a retread of like Lion King 2.
I haven't seen the trailers for it. I
but
I
oh,
didn't even know I
but
didn't even know it was actually about Mufasa. First, I was like asking Rob after a screening. I'm like,
uh,
wasn't Mufasa his dad? He's like, yeah, this is the movie's a prequel, and I just went, oh my God, like we needed a prequel to this. Like I don't need
yeah.
to see how the Lion King became the Lion King. Not everything needs an answer as to where they got there, because it's not that interesting.
See, and you talk about remakes, probably one of the better remakes I have watched is the one for The Crazies, which
Yeah.
outside of the last few minutes of that film, the way it ended, I was like rolled my eyes a bit, but the rest of the movie was far better than I thought it was going to be because it's based off of a lower budget film that was shot a lot of it from like one room or just a few shots. If you look at the original Crazies, it was shot on a small budget, and here they had a bigger budget, and they told pretty much the same story just from a slightly different perspective. But you still had some of the famous parts in there, and that's what I liked about it. Is I'm like, okay, this is if you're doing a remake, bring something fresh to it in the regards to games, what they did with Final Fantasy VII. I got a PS4, and so one of the things that I picked up was the Final Fantasy. I forgot which name of it. It's as bad as Kingdom Hearts. The remake, the first one, part one or whatever, that
Yeah.
literally is just pretty much in Midgar. I started playing it. I'm like, okay, this feels like the first game.
Hmm.
You've got the characters, you've got the look, you've got the, but the story and what you're doing is so expanded and so. I'm like, okay, I'm
Hmm.
in. I'm
Yeah.
in. And that took some creativity to sit there and go, okay, how do we take this probably one of the most beloved games and why Sony is still around today, what started it, and how do we do that to where we can create it to make it fresh, yet still feel like that original one. And that I think they accomplished with that one.
Yeah.
And that takes some creativity to do that, to take that and go, let's make it new, but still kind of feel like and I thought they pulled it off well. So,
Yeah, it's not just the same exact game again. Like, although,
right.
like, the story, I don't like them adding, like, the whole whispers thing and all that, but at least it does keep me interested throughout it. I already seen Aerith's death in part two. I spoiled this for myself because I want to see if they fucked it up, and they did, you know. But I'm not as bad as I thought. I thought they're gonna give you the choice to make her live. And I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
want them having that choice. Like Rob
Yeah.
was saying, he's not a fan of choices. And that's like one of the
That would have been an
reasons.
example of like a risk I'm not sure I would have liked. Because then
Yeah.
you're not, it's not betraying the source material. It's also like wish fulfillment. Like
Yeah.
here, we'll we undo like one of the saddest things in gaming history just to make some
Hmm.
people happy.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that totally ruins the experience. It would totally ruin the experience if you
Yeah.
had that choice.
Yeah. And I was worried they were gonna do that. It's just that they do this weird thing after she dies where she's like talking to Cloud and she's like, "Are you ready to go on another adventure?" And he's just like, "Oh, yes." I don't know. I can't do Cloud. Like he just sounds bored. But
He always sounded even
yeah.
when I would read his parts in Final Fantasy VII on the PlayStation, I
Yeah.
was like, I always heard it in a bored voice. Like he
Yeah.
just comes off as just being
Oh, they nailed the
bored. Yeah.
voice acting. The voice acting
Yeah.
sounds exactly the way you would imagine it, like when you see the little text bubbles. Like, Barrett sounds like Mr. T
Yeah. Yeah.
because as Honest Trailers puts it, it's like how Japanese people depict black people in movies. But yeah, like that game did a great job just doing something different while also feeling the same,
Hmm.
especially the combat system. The combat system's great because, like, I mean, it's a little much visually because there's just so many sparks and all this shit coming at my face, and I can't see even who I'm hitting. But at the same time, it really gives you the idea of that spectacle of the fight because that's what Final Fantasy is. I mean, like, I don't know who could survive because, like, Sephiroth's final move is that he'll shoot a beam from the universe.
Yeah, he
He's
shoots a
chuck,
beam from like somewhere in the universe and brings it
Yeah.
or
down
he'll
on you.
start throwing planets at you from the
Yeah,
sky.
Yeah, that
Like,
was it. Yeah. But then you can defeat him by having like a bunch of people like on horses go around in circles. And it's like impossible to find that Knights of the Round. I think you gotta get like a black chocobo to go there uh but yeah, I mean that game gives you so many choices and it's fun. It's fun to level up like that. There's been a long period of games where like open world leveling up games are like really becoming a thing. And I liked them, but now I like the more linear ones because I just don't have the time to play, the like really long games I want to play. Like if I were to play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, it would probably take me about a year or more to finish
That's
it.
my one big issue with games today. Not
Hmm.
everything needs tons of filler and to be 30 hours long or 50 hours long.
That's why I
It's
loved
okay to just
Astrobot.
it's okay to just tell the story, get in and get out,
Yeah.
satisfy someone, be done with it.
Yeah, I think so too, because a lot of these games will have padding where like Fallout series is pretty guilty of that. Like, hey, come over to this village and help me do this thing. So then I could so then I can I don't give you something in return. And there's just a lot of that before you can go back to your main quest.
Well, that's why a lot. I mean, they're still played, but a lot of multiplayer MMORPG games end up fading after a few years for their veteran players because in order for that environment to work, you've got to keep coming up with something new and fresh. Otherwise, it's just rinse, wash, repeat for all your missions. And yeah, for maybe someone, a younger kid or someone who's got nothing but school and home, that's okay. But when you get to an older gamer,
Right.
you're like, you're like, I've got to grind again. Like when Conan the Barbarian MMORPG came out, I bought it. I was stoked. I'm such a huge Conan fan. I'm like, oh, all right. So I got the box set, right, with the book and the
Yeah.
stuff and the soundtrack and all that. And I played it for a few months and it was very interesting. And then I was like, okay. I didn't level up to 80. Like some people blew through it in 2 weeks and they're like, oh, it's 80 and this game sucks. There's nothing no missions to play. You can play. But after a while, a lot of the quests were rinse, wash, repeat ones. And then after a while, it's just like, I want to do something different.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
You
well, that's kind of like Grand Theft Auto. It's like once you get through all the missions, it's like, okay, now I can kill as many people as I want.
now I can just go and play. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can play Highway Sniper all day
Yeah.
now. I just,
And I
yeah.
think after like 10 minutes of killing people, I'm like, okay, I'm bored. Maybe if I had that cops not coming. I don't know. I need the cheat codes. That makes it more fun. Like there's a cheat code in San Andreas where like you can punch something and it'll make it
Yep,
explode.
yep.
Yeah.
Or the big head one where it just turns everybody's heads really huge.
Yeah,
It's
they're
like,
like they're like Funko
but
Pop toys. Yeah.
but if you look at that, that still takes some creativity to come up with different things like that.
Oh
So,
yeah. Even Grand Theft Auto, like it takes a lot of creativity to write that. It takes a lot to write a video game.
And
Writing
don't
video
forget Ray
games.
Liotta's voiceover work in Vice City.
Oh
That's a
my
right.
really good
God.
yeah.
And did you ever see his interviews about it? They're hilarious.
No, I haven't.
He's like, oh, I would voice over the character, and I would, I didn't know, I could tell I didn't know what the game was about, but I could get an idea because half my lines were like, get the fuck out of the car. And I'm like, yeah, that was pretty much Ray Liotta's like performance in like it was weird. Like in Goodfellas, he kind of played like he was a mobster, but he was kind of harmless. He doesn't really like hit or shoot anyone. And then in everything after Goodfellas, he just murders people and screams all the time. And yeah, it's kind of and yeah, Tommy Vercetti was sort of an extension of that role. But yeah, like think of the artistry going around and creating a 1980s. What's Vice City supposed to be like?
Yeah,
Miami?
1980. Yeah, my 1980 Miami, mid
Yeah,
80s. It was
yeah,
mid 80s Miami, hence the neon and the Miami Vice vibe and the drugs and all of that and you know, Scarface references and that. Yeah, it was that's what it was supposed to be. And I think
yeah.
they nailed that. They nailed that
Oh
feel
yeah.
so well. And that took some creativity to try to give you that feel like, all right, yeah.
Yeah, and that game is just it's still like probably it's one of my favorite Grand Theft Autos. Now when I play it today, it's the controls aren't as great and all that, but that's okay. I mean, the new one is it's modern day Miami, the new one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
which who knows when that's going to come out. I always find it funny that gamers are like, why don't they just release it already? Just bring it out. And then a game like Cyberpunk comes out and they go, why
And
did
it's
you release
broken.
this too early?
Yeah, this is too broken. Why they
Yeah.
released this too early? That should have gone back to development. You're like, well, you were just screaming, "Why release
Right.
it?"
Yeah. But those are gamers. But they do get kind of misconstrued. But I think video games by most people aren't considered not mo well, yeah, I'd say like most I wouldn't say most people anymore. I think a lot of people could say video games are art, but there's still a lot of people who think video games are just Super Mario jumping up and down,
Yeah.
and they don't know what they are today. Uh, but I would challenge anyone to play That Dragon Cancer. It's like, okay, play, I'd say 10 minutes of this game, and then come back to me, tell me what you have to say, you know? And they'll be like, okay, your video game made me cry. And I'm like, I gotcha. Hey, but but I mean that's the thing is that it's a medium to sort of express yourself, and if you're
Mhm.
expressing yourself through it, and you're kind of finding a therapy to it, like Ryan Green did with Dragon Cancer, then I don't see I'd say like not only is it a work of art, that game you can show in a gallery
Mhm.
instead of just something that's shown to other gamers. And I think the point I was trying to get to before my own brain started to, I think a worm's eating my brain like RFK's is. Uh, but the point I was getting to is that I think there's a common misconception as to what the average gamer is. They think the gamer is either a teenager yelling racial slurs over Xbox, or it's a grown man who lives in his parents' basement and doesn't have a job and does nothing but play video games all day. Or it's of a lazy husband who's not taking care of their family because they're playing a video game. And I think when people have that idea in their head, they think, well, video games is just entertainment for lazy people. And it's like, that's not true because there's a
Mhm.
lot of people who are not lazy fathers. They play video games. Actually, 46% of gamers are women, with 53% being men. So, what do we have to say about that then if both genders are enjoying games? Because before that, video games weren't like girls didn't get into it at all.
Yeah.
Like maybe they'd have the occasional Barbie game, but girls never play that, But now you're getting, there's about 3 billion people on this planet. I watched about like three TED Talks on video games being art, but there's 3 billion people who are playing video games. That's more people that are getting Starbucks. That's more people who are buying cigarettes. Maybe, that's more. That's more people than a lot of numbers. And if your game is reaching out to that many people, then something's working. And it's because it's not just one type of game. Not every game is a first person shooter. Not every game is a third person adventure. Not every game is an RPG. They're all different categories for a reason. And, it's amazing. I mean, talk about artistry in games. The new Indiana Jones game looks
Mhm.
like one of the movies brought to life. And I think once we get rid of that image of the the incel basement dweller is the usual gamer and they need to go out and get jobs. It's like maybe we should reevaluate who's thinking that because guess what? The people who are playing video games now, they're like the 40-year-old bosses or the guys in their 30s playing them. And now their kids are playing them. It's like I'm teaching my nephew right now. He's obsessed with Astrobot because I
Mhm.
got him it and I knew he'd be hooked and he was. And I think we got rid of that conception. I think people might take games as a form of art a little more seriously.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, everything you said, it is developed into a form of art, and I think it's now being looked at that when you look at awards and other things, or it being adapted to other mediums, or just being talked about in the zeitgeist constantly, or people have them on their phones. People throw a game on their phone while they're traveling on the bus. While it may seem like a simple app, still took talent to draw those figures and those sprites and to design that game to keep you playing so you aren't bored on your bus ride or train ride home. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, how do you
Yeah,
think?
you just summed it up right there. Everything
yeah.
you said.
Yeah. Everyone, yeah, it's like gaming's for everyone. And it's like my sister, for instance, she says she hates games. I'm like, well, you did play Mario as a kid, and I'm pretty sure you'd play Angry Birds if you downloaded it. So
There
it's
you go.
I don't know if that's an old reference now or not. Like Angry Birds. Is that old now? I don't
It's
think
old
so.
now. Yeah,
Ah, damn.
it's fairly old now.
Oh, get me my cane and my back pills. Yeah. Now
Yeah.
can, but I
Uh,
don't know. It's funny though, when you play video games, I feel like they can reach to an audience in a very therapeutic way. You
hmm
know, like if someone's playing that Dragon Cancer and they're going through a similar experience, maybe it helps them get through it by, because sometimes like what I'm depressed sometimes, it's like watching happy movies doesn't make me more happy or get me out of it. It's just like fuck all these happy people. I feel like shit right now. I want to see something that's gonna make me feel more like shit. And I think a game like Dragon Cancer would do that. It's like, my son's dying of this. Here's somebody else who's experiencing it.
hmm
I'm gonna play this game so I can kind of reach a similar catharsis with this person. Uh, and I think if a video game can reach people emotionally like that, that's something special. I mean, how do you think video games can reach people in a positive way?
representation for
Mm.
one. I
That's
mean,
an important one.
that's an important one. I mean, and you think about it, games have been doing that since Metroid. I mean, how many gamer guys were playing Metroid and you beat Metroid and all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, hey, guess what?
It's a girl.
It's a girl in the armor." And you're like, "What?" you so I mean, but in a positive way. I think the stories told on some of the games, or and not all of them, but there's some out there where people can feel connected and realize they're not the only ones. Like you said, the Dragon Cancer game, or just even your other games we've mentioned tonight. Some of them have storylines with characters that represent those who don't normally see themselves portrayed
Yeah.
some way in a positive manner.
Or
So I
social
think,
commentary is another
right.
good one.
hmm
hmm
Yeah. Yeah. Especially Kojima, because he's on top of that. I mean, when they're talking about AI and free will, you watch that like back in 2001, you're like, that's science fiction stuff. You watch it in 2024, you go, oh my God, he was right. And that's what makes it so good. It's like that video game that came out in 2001 has so much more to say in it than most movies do, or
hmm
even a lot of works of art like that you'd find on a wall do, or that a song does.
hmm
So, and that's what evokes art. Even if it's for a commercial purpose, you have commercial art, and then you have independence art, and that's what these indie games are. Like if you play Braid, or you played Fez, or Super Meat Boy. Like you would see like, oh, and there's actually a great documentary called Indie Gamer that was
hmm
about the making of two of those games, and that's great. And that one really kind of shows you like how much a video game developer sacrifices in order to make a game. And like one of the characters you're really rooting for because he's financially not doing well on his own and all that. And in the end, his game makes a whole lot of money. And he's a, and that was like a big hit documentary, I think, when it came out at the time on Netflix. But that movie, Indie Gamer, was something where it showed you just the work that goes into making an independent game and also just like the tremendous sacrifice you have to make because you basically just spend every second of your day just coding,
hmm
and that's what you'd spend all day doing. And nobody would do that if they weren't passionate about it.
Very, very true. Yeah, anybody who has doesn't have the passion in it isn't going to put in that work.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's amazing. But why do you think like movies? Because it's funny, we were mentioning movies earlier. People didn't take that seriously as a form of art initially. people are like, "What, that movie where you saw a train go by? That's not art, you see?" And then they walked away. I'm sure everyone talked like that back then.
Yeah, that's how they
I
all
think it
talk.
just comes down to people fearing anything they don't understand or that's new. Just
Mm.
general stuff like that.
Yeah, because yeah, whenever something is new, it's met with with an amount of I guess trepidation. People are saying, "Well, this new thing, this can't be considered art." It's like, yes, it can, and we'll show you how. You know, just like how a lot of forms of music weren't accepted into the culture until white people did it. But and of course, most of that influence was through black artists.
Hmm.
And music's an art because it helped people express themselves and it reached audiences in ways that you otherwise couldn't do normally. But I'm gonna wrap this up because we've been talking for a while. I have so many other questions, but I think we can I'll just leave it at one big generalized question. Where do you see games being appreciated as a form of art in the next 10 years?
I think the appreciation only grows from here. I think we've
Hmm.
seen it growing over the past like decade, 20 years or so. And I think developers will keep finding ways to innovate with storytelling as the technology continues to advance. And
Yeah.
as long as they can stay away from doing things for money, as long as we have a healthy indie ecosystem of games coming out, then I think the appreciation will continue to grow. But there will always be developers putting their artistic passion or personal passion into whatever they create.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I was gonna say I think it's from the time from when Ebert was saying that I think to now there's been a growing appreciation because games have been in such the zeitgeist and as ingrained in our culture, especially with this last generation, because as Gen Xers grew up with it and we introduced it to our kids who are now the 20 somethings, and that so they've been around games their entire life and they appreciate and they recognize what it is and yeah, and I think it's just going to grow from here an appreciation for it. And as the technology grows, more people will be able to tell their stories in better and more unique ways. I think, you know, you're always going to have that commercialization, but yeah, Robert said it great. If as long as you have that indie game ecosystem and that spirit, then I think it'll always be appreciated, if not more.
Yeah. I think it's just a matter of time until that one game comes out where everyone says, "Hey, you have to see this. What, is it a great game? No. It's a great work of art. You got to
Yeah.
see this." And we could say that about a lot of games we played, but I think as the technology advances, people with less resources can do more. You
Hmm.
know, uh, Konami is a company that just wants to invest in pachinko machines. They still are, but they can turn a really good profit by hiring Bluebird team, who basically they hired him for cheap. We all
Yeah.
know they did. That's why they grabbed them. And Bluebird team's previous games were not very scary, like Layers of Fear. It has a scene where a bunch of spooky onions come out of the wall. Like, I don't see how that's scary, but somehow, by some miracle, they really loved the Silent Hill franchise and they pulled it off. And in
Hmm.
the old day, and if Konami had to make that game with the budget that was available, I'd say maybe 5 years ago, they wouldn't do it. Or no, not 5 years ago, but 10 years ago,
Yeah.
because the game was in development, I think, for 5 years. And, I think as it evolves, you could do more challenging things with it, especially with virtual reality. I would
Hmm.
love to see what they're going to do with virtual reality as art. I think that Dragon Cancer could be a VR game, for instance. Like you could
Whew.
easily put it
Yeah.
on there. Yeah, it would be an intense. This is so much endorsement for that film, and they don't even have it available anywhere or anyone to interview. I'm wondering if maybe it was too painful for
It
the
could have
family.
been, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The game's still available, but the documentary,
Right.
isn't, because I want to reach out to those filmmakers and talk about that game. But having said that, I think we've all kind of come to a consensus. Yes, video games are art and a high form of art. Roger Ebert was wrong, but I do think if he played that Dragon Cancer, that could change his mind, maybe, or maybe he could say, "Look, yes, it's very emotional, it's very personal, but you still play it where you get from the beginning to a stage to the end of a stage."
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, but each stage is like a stage of cancer. And but that's okay. But anyways, I want to thank everyone for coming on. I'd like to thank Mark Crosscheck from Special Mark Productions. And you can find all his YouTube stuff on here, as well as all his other socials. And Robert Koiger for The Flickering Myth. I'm Mike Crawley from YPA Reviews. The YPA stands for You'll Probably Agree. And yeah, well, I guess we'll see you at the gaming corner.